Grace, perfect timing. I have something important to tell you." My mother's tone was strangely stiff. My father glared at me in silence. I had nothing but a bad feeling. The heavy atmosphere drifting in the living room tightened my stomach little by little. Just a moment ago, I had finally finished the day's trading, rolled my stiff shoulders, and let out a deep sigh. The battle against the endless rows of numbers on the screen was a serious game where I could never let my guard down even for a second. Being called a stock investor might sound glamorous, but in reality, it is lonely and full of grueling tasks. Even so, the moment when my analysis and decisions bear fruit in the form of assets brings an incomparable sense of accomplishment. Fortunately, today ended with a positive balance. As a small reward, I thought I might brew some coffee with slightly better beans. But the moment I opened the living room door with that thought, my modest plan was shattered. My father lounged arrogantly on the sofa while my mother sat next to him with her arms crossed, her face looking grim. The atmosphere was like detectives waiting to interrogate a suspect who had committed a serious crime. What? Pretending to stay calm was the best I could manage. My mother glanced at my father once, then opened her mouth as if she had made up her mind. As you know, your sister Lily has just given birth, and this is a very difficult time for her. So, I think our family needs to support her. That again. Ever since Lily had barged into this apartment with her newborn without asking for my permission a few days ago, I had been hearing those words chanted repeatedly like a spell. This apartment, which I had been renting from my parents at a slightly cheaper rate than the market price, had somehow been transformed from my fortress into Lily's postpartum care house. My sister discovered she was pregnant after breaking up with her boyfriend and ended up giving birth as a single mother. Since she was in the middle of job hunting, she didn't secure employment and gave birth while only working part-time. "So I've been thinking," my father said heavily. "You work from home, so your schedule is flexible, isn't it? Couldn't you look after the baby during the day so that Lily can get some rest?" What? For a moment, I couldn't understand the meaning of his words. Become a free babysitter? Me, who spends all day fighting with monitors, making split-second decisions measured in milliseconds? You've got to be kidding. I have my own work. Do you think investors just sit around doing nothing? My voice turned sharp without me realizing it. But my mother dismissed my protest coldly, as if she had expected it. "Oh, don't be selfish. We're family, and it's only natural that we help each other. If you say you can't do that, well then, starting next month, we'll raise the rent to match the market rate. If you don't like that, take care of your sister's child for free." I heard something snap inside my head. Raising the rent? That was practically blackmail. They believed I was financially dependent on them, unable to leave this apartment, and therefore could be forced to accept such unreasonable demands. More than anger, a cold sense of despair climbed up my spine. "Are you serious?" My voice was lower and calmer than even I had expected. Perhaps my attitude annoyed my father, as he raised his eyebrows and spat out his words. "Of course I am. Lily is going through the hardest time of her life right now. And compared to her, what about you? You just sit at home tapping on your computer. It's an easy life, isn't it? Why don't you contribute to the family a little?" Easy life, huh? My work, where I sacrifice sleep to follow the movements of the world economy, analyze enormous amounts of corporate financial statements, and live under the pressure where a single wrong judgment could wipe out my entire fortune, was recognized by them as nothing more than that. No, they didn't even try to recognize it. To them, I was still a child, a convenient existence they could keep under their control. And then there was the root of this tragedy. My sister Lily. She had completely occupied my main bedroom and acted as if she were a queen. A few days ago, when I returned to the living room after finishing trading, I encountered an unbelievable sight. The familiar door to my room was half open, and from inside came the sound of a baby crying and Lily's syrupy voice. When I timidly peeked inside, the room had been completely transformed into Lily's domain. Next to my double bed stood a crib, while the floor was littered with diapers, baby powder, and bottles. From the ceiling hung a colorful mobile for children, while the modern art posters I had collected as a hobby were torn down, rolled up, and left in a corner. My personal belongings, unfinished books, work documents, my tablet, were all piled carelessly onto a tiny side table looking like nothing more than a heap of junk. My fortress, my castle, had been trampled. I was speechless in the face of that fact. As I stood there in shock, Lily, who had been soothing the baby on my bed, finally noticed me. With no hint of shame, she smiled brightly. "Oh, Grace, welcome back. Look at this little angel's face. Isn't it adorable?" My body trembled with anger. "Lily, what is this? Why are you in my room?" "Huh?" "Because Mom and Dad told me to use it. Since it's right next to the living room, it's more convenient, and it gets the best sunlight, don't you think? A baby needs a comfortable environment." Spoken as if it were her obvious right, her words left me unable to respond. Mom and Dad? That meant they hadn't just allowed this outrageous act, but had actually let it. While I was away, they had simply given away my private space. That night, when I protested to my parents, they looked at me as if they couldn't understand why I was so angry. "Lily has a baby, and it's tough for her. Of course she should use the best room. You can just move your things to your own room. Put up with it a little," my mother said. As for my father, he insisted only on one point. It's family helping family. My protest was like punching a curtain, and that wasn't all. Ever since Lily started living in this apartment, she had been consuming my food without permission. The expensive yogurt I had been saving to enjoy on the weekend, the nuts I stocked to eat between work sessions. Before I knew it, they had all ended up in her stomach. Every time I opened the refrigerator, I felt the same sense of loss as if someone had broken into my home. Once, unable to bear it anymore, I complained to Lily directly. "Hey, could you not eat my things without asking?" But she narrowed her eyes with an expression that showed she was genuinely annoyed. "Calm down, Grace. It's just food. We're family, don't be so petty. Besides, I'm breastfeeding now, so I need the nutrition." Next to her, my parents nodded along. "She's right. Be generous, you're the older sister." In this household, every unreasonable act was justified with that magical phrase, "Because we're family." I returned to the living room holding a certain document. My parents were still sitting on the sofa, as if they believed I was preparing to comply with their demands. Without a word, I slid that notice across the table. "What is this?" My father took the document with a puzzled look. My mother peered over from beside him. After a few seconds of silence, their faces changed color. "A lease termination notice? Grace, what does this mean?" My mother's shrill voice echoed through the living room. My father's lips trembled, and the hand holding the paper shook in small quivers. "There's nothing to explain beyond what it says. In 30 days, I will officially move out of this apartment. I will follow the law and go through the proper procedures." "What? What nonsense are you talking about? Move out? Where do you expect me to live if I leave?" my father shouted. In their minds, there was probably no place I could go. They must have believed that without the mercy they provided, I would be left homeless. That's my problem, so you don't need to worry about it. Oh, and I said with the best smile I could muster, regarding the last month's rent, at the time of signing the contract, I paid the rent for the first and last months of stay, along with the security deposit, so there should be no additional payment due. Please make sure to return my security deposit after you inspect the condition of the room when I vacate this place. Don't be ridiculous. My father slammed his fist on the table. Do you think you can just do whatever you want? Have you forgotten the debt you owe us for raising you? Debt? You expect me to sacrifice my life and become my sister's slave out of gratitude? Sorry, but I don't need that. What you really wanted to help was not Lily, but to escape from the responsibility of caring for her by dumping it on someone else, wasn't it? That must have hit home. They were at a loss for words. Deciding I had nothing left to say to them, I turned on my heel. I went back to my room and immediately opened my laptop. First, I messaged a trusted friend. "Let's do it," I wrote. Then I sent a short email to the property manager in Hawaii. "I will be arriving there next week. Please make the preparations," I wrote. Everything had been prepared for years. The next day, my parents shouted at me every time they saw my face, "Don't you feel sorry for Lily? How can you abandon your family? You are such a cold daughter. Because of you, our retirement is ruined." I offered no rebuttal and kept a blank expression. Their words no longer reached me. Then something decisive happened. I stepped away for a few minutes to use the bathroom. When I returned to my home office, Lily was sitting at my desk. To my disbelief, she was holding my photo on her smartphone up to my laptop's camera. It was obvious she was trying to unlock it with facial recognition. "What are you doing?" A low voice crawling on the floor escaped me. Lily flinched and hurriedly hid her phone screen. "I'm not doing anything. I just thought your photo was really good," she stammered. Her excuse was so clumsy that my anger went white-hot. What if I'd been a little slower returning? What if, by chance, an old photo had unlocked my security? My entire fortune could have been put at risk by this irresponsible woman's cunning curiosity. "Get out of here right now, and never enter this room without permission again." What kind of tone is that? We're family. I was only looking a little. "Get out." At my shout, Lily's face twisted and she slunk out of the room. With that incident, the faint sliver of affection I still had for my family vanished completely. They had no understanding of the concept of boundaries. If I stayed here, everything of mine would be consumed by them. I had to escape as soon as possible. Lily's insensitive behavior escalated, and my parents' mental attacks grew stickier and more persistent each day. The longer I stayed in this house, the more I felt my soul being eroded. 30 days later? Impossible. I couldn't endure even one more day. Fortunately, I had prepaid the last month of stay at the time of signing the contract. They have no right to complain legally no matter when I vacate the room. As long as I leave it clean, I should get my full security deposit back. I sent a short message to Hannah. "Sorry, change of plans. I'm doing it tomorrow morning." And then came the fateful morning. I rose quietly with the dawn and made a final check of the minimal luggage I had packed to move out within days. Hannah had already secured my expensive personal items and important documents. The remaining furniture and appliances no longer mattered to me. They could have them, along with these accursed memories. On the table, I left only a note. "I'm vacating today. The rent for the remaining period has been paid. I've left the keys in the mailbox." I reached for the front door handle. At that moment, "Where do you think you're going?" My heart jumped at my father's low voice behind me. I turned to find my father in pajamas, my mother behind him with a worried look. As you can see, I'm moving out. I pressed down my agitation and answered firmly. Wasn't it supposed to be 30 days later? My father pressed. I changed my mind. But since I've already paid the last month's rent, you shouldn't suffer any loss. There's nothing wrong with it under the contract. That's not the point. You're abandoning us. Abandoning Lily and your newborn niece. I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just leaving this house as you wanted. You can take care of Lily yourselves, as you said. You ungrateful child, my mother screamed. At that moment, with a clatter, Lily came out of the room. She looked at the scene before her with amusement and smirked. If she wants to go, let her go, Mom. It's no concern of ours whether this selfish woman is here or not, right? Her words were the final signal. Without another word, I turned my back on them. I threw open the front door and leapt into the outside world. I heard shouting behind me, but didn't look back. I slid into Hannah's car and we drove off through the waking city. In the rearview mirror, the apartment grew smaller and smaller. No tears came, only an immense sense of relief as if a huge weight had been lifted, enveloped me. Hannah's car drove straight to the airport. She was the only one who knew everything about my plan, my sole ally. Are you really going to be okay on your own? Hannah asked me with concern as I headed toward the check-in counter. I gave her a firm nod. Yes, I'll be fine. Thank you for everything. Without you, I would have surely broken down. Don't be ridiculous. We're friends. Once you get to Hawaii, you better contact me. And don't you dare look at any messages from that family again. I know. We exchanged a firm handshake, and I headed to the security checkpoint. As I stepped through the gate, the feeling welled up inside me that I was finally parting ways with my old life. It was as if heavy chains had been cut, and my body felt lighter, almost floating. The plane took off, and soon the city below shrank quickly from view. Goodbye, my suffocating past. After several hours of flight, what I saw through the airplane window was the endless blue ocean and the shining sun. Hawaii. This was the true fortress I had obtained with my own power. When I stepped off the plane, the warm, humid air brushed against my skin as if to welcome me. I got into the taxi I had arranged and gave the driver the address. It was a place I had told no one about. Not my parents, not anyone. A few years ago, when my investments had started to succeed, I had bought a small condominium as a gift to myself and as a refuge for the day I knew might eventually come. A quiet ocean view hideaway, slightly removed from the bustle of Waikiki. When I opened the door, there on the table was a platter of welcome fruit, surely arranged by the management company. And beyond the large window stretched a breathtaking sunset. The blazing orange sun illuminated the calm sea with sparkling light. I dropped my bags and stepped out onto the balcony as if drawn there. The sea breeze gently caressed my cheek. Here, nothing bound me. What existed was only complete freedom and quiet time. At last, I had taken back my own life, but, of course, my family was not about to let my peaceful new life go so easily. A few days into my life in Hawaii, my smartphone began to ring incessantly, as if it had broken. Calls from unknown numbers, blocked caller IDs, and a flood of text messages. On the preview screen of the notifications, I saw my mother's anguished cries. How could you do something so cruel? And my father's furious commands. Come back immediately. I remembered my promise to Hannah, and I rejected each call one by one, deleting the messages without opening them. Eventually, I blocked every phone number and messaging account they might know. Finally, I thought I would have peace. But just then, another attack came from a different direction. It was from relatives. A message from my Aunt Natalie arrived in a messenger app. "Grace, I heard you fought with your parents and left home. Lily just gave birth, and it's such a difficult time. How could you? Your family, so go home and apologize right away." Apparently, my mother had been calling every relative, spreading the story that I was a heartless devil who abandoned her sister who had just given birth and her aging parents. To top it off, the message came with a photo attached. My mother's face swollen from crying and Lily beside her, looking exhausted. The perfect tragic heroine theater. At first, I thought of ignoring it. But as a flood of condemning messages from relatives kept coming, I decided to strike back. If I simply blocked them, in their minds, my mother's fabricated story would remain as the truth. That was intolerable. I created a group chat, inviting every relative who had contacted me, including my Aunt Natalie. There, I wrote down the whole sequence of events plainly, without emotion. Only the facts. That I had been threatened with a rent increase by my parents because I refused to become a free babysitter. That Lily had used my belongings without permission and interfered with my work. That the apartment for which I bore all expenses myself had been treated as if it were their own property. And then I presented the decisive evidence. The footage from the small security camera I had installed at the entrance of my room, showing Lily sneaking into my office and trying to unlock my computer with my photo. Ever since that incident, I had placed a small recording device to protect myself. The video clearly showed Lily's furious expression as she peered into my computer, my voice confronting her and her clumsy excuse. The moment I posted that evidence in the group chat, the constant flood of notifications stopped dead. It was as if time itself had frozen. The first to react was my younger cousin, Taylor. "I can't believe this. Lily was doing something like that? Grace, that must have been awful for you." That broke the silence, and the atmosphere among the relatives completely changed. "Natalie, what on earth is this? This isn't the story we were told. Wasn't it supposed to be Grace who was completely at fault?" My Aunt Natalie tried to make a desperate excuse. "It must be a mistake. Grace obviously fabricated this footage to deceive us." But no one believed her anymore. Many relatives who had been pushed around by Lily's selfishness for years began to sympathize with me. If what Grace says is true, she had every right to leave. In fact, I think it's amazing she endured it as long as she did. Her parents spoiled Lily far too much. The group chat turned into a place of condemnation directed at my mother and Natalie. I made no further rebuttals, simply watching quietly. Eventually, unable to withstand it, my mother and Natalie left the group chat. Messages of apology and encouragement came from the relatives who remained. "I'm sorry for blaming you without knowing the truth. I hope you find happiness in your new place." I replied politely to each one, adding, "Please don't share my new contact information or address with my parents." And so, round 2 involving my relatives ended in my complete victory. I set down my smartphone and stepped out onto the balcony. There it was, the same calm and beautiful Hawaiian sea, unchanged from a few days ago. My world would no longer be disturbed by anyone. Months passed after that. Life in Hawaii was exactly what I had dreamed of. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of waves and stretched in the fresh air. I enjoyed breakfast slowly and devoted myself to trading during the day. In the afternoons, I took walks on the beach or spent time with local friends. At night, I savored my own time while watching the setting sun. There was no need to worry about anyone's mood, no need to do anything for anyone else. I could use my time entirely for myself. This complete economic and spiritual independence was what I had desired more than anything. There was no longer any direct contact from that poisonous family. Even my relatives seemed to be respecting my wishes. One day, I received a message from my cousin Taylor, who sometimes reached out to check on me. It began with the preface, "How are you? There's something I'd like to tell you," and then went on to describe their miserable situation. According to Taylor, ever since I left the apartment, my parents' finances had been in shambles. The loss of the rent I had been paying had hit their lives directly. The rent you'd been paying apparently covered a large part of their living expenses. They'd maintained their standard of living on the assumption of that income. Now that it's gone, they're in serious trouble, she wrote. I sighed. They had brought it on themselves. This was merely the bill coming due for the comfortable life they had enjoyed on my money. And about Lily, Taylor's message continued. As you might expect, she's basically dumped all the childcare on your parents. The baby cries terribly at night, and they take turns soothing it. But they're not young anymore, so they're exhausted both physically and mentally. The house is always full of shouting now. Before I even asked, Taylor also mentioned Lily herself. Lily shows no sign of looking for a job. She says she's too stressed from childcare and just spends the day on her phone or talking for hours with friends. The other day, my mom went over to check on them, and the baby was crying while Lily ignored it. So your grandmother rushed to give it milk. She was completely appalled. Everything was exactly the ending I had predicted. A few more weeks passed after reading Taylor's message. Then, one day, a letter arrived for me. When I saw the sender's name, I frowned. It was from my father. Perhaps one of my relatives had leaked the address of my P.O. box. Or perhaps they had hired a private investigator. Either way, it could not be good news. I carefully opened the envelope with a cutter. Inside was a single sheet of stationery and an invoice. On the stationery, in my father's trembling handwriting, were these words. To Grace. Since you left, our lives have fallen apart. Lily is on the verge of postpartum depression. The baby cries all day long, and your mother and I are at our limits both physically and mentally. This is all your fault for abandoning your family. And to think you had a house in Hawaii, something we never knew. Since you have money to spare, you should help your family. At the very least, as atonement, pay the amount on the enclosed invoice. This is part of the childcare expenses you should have borne. I was too stunned to even speak. Looking at the invoice, I saw absurd items listed such as babysitter fees, 3 months, compensation for emotional distress, postpartum care expenses for Lily, and at the bottom, the total, $5,000. Before anger could rise, laughter did. They would never change, not even at the very end. Self-centered to the core, masters of shifting responsibility, they clearly intended to squeeze out the last drop from me, who is supposedly living idly in Hawaii. But once again, they had chosen the wrong opponent. I immediately contacted my lawyer and scanned and sent the letter and invoice. A few hours later, I received a reply. This has no legal effect whatsoever. It is malicious harassment. I will prepare a formal restraining order and no contact demand letter, and send it to them by certified mail. From now on, if they attempt to contact you in any way, immediate legal action will be possible. I hired the lawyer and had the documents sent. Of course, I paid all the costs. If a few $1,000s could legally and completely sever this rotten bond, it was cheap. By now, that heavy envelope bearing the lawyer's name had surely arrived at my parents' house. Just imagining their faces as they read it filled me with delight. This was the true final blow. The lawyer's formal warning became their last judgment. Since then, every trace of their existence has vanished from my world. No direct contact, no gossip through relatives, nothing. At last, before the absolute wall of the law, they must have realized that I was no longer someone they could control. I stepped out onto the balcony and took a deep breath. The sweet scent of Hawaiian flowers filled my chest. The sun was sinking into the ocean, painting the sky and sea in a beautiful gradient. This view was what I had fought for and gained with my own power. This was my sanctuary, where no one could disturb me. If at that time, if they had respected me, if they had asked in a reasonable way. No, it was pointless to think such things. They themselves had destroyed every possibility. To you, who are reading this story, I want to say one final thing. If you are suffering because you are bound by someone's expectations or demands, even if they are your blood relatives, please do not forget. Even with family, protecting your boundaries is never selfish. The right to cherish yourself and to live your own life belongs to everyone.